Let's preview the Sun Belt basketball tournament with ESPN's Matt Stewart. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. All right, we get the privilege and the honor of having ESPN's Matt Stewart join us. He will be on the call for all of the ball games through the semifinals, so including tonight's games in the first round action. We do preview that. We talk about JMU's chances of getting a at-large berth. We talk about, will there be an upset, who to watch out for, and we break down kind of the top four teams and who may be the surprises and what makes the Sun Belt Conference tournament different than the other tournaments. Let's get to it. He will be calling all the ball games through the semifinals of the Sun Belt Conference Men's Championship. He is Matt Stewart on Locked On Sun Belt. Dave Schultz back on another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. The Sun Belt basketball tournament in Pensacola getting underway later on tonight, the first round action. And it will be called by our buddy Matt Stewart. He'll have all the action on ESPN Plus through the semifinals. Matt, thanks for hopping on Locked On Sun Belt, and how are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, your lighting is great. I feel like I'm in an interrogation room with a naked light bulb and I'm in a gulag about to be interrogated, maybe waterboarded or something here. But I'm in my hotel room.
Well, so. I am binging Law and Order Criminal Intent. So just hang tight and I'm going to pin whatever crime on you by the end of the episode.
There you go.
All right. So I'm going to cut to the chase, and then we'll go through this, okay?
Sure. You go to
it. Right. I'm going to be shocked if it is anybody but, barring injury, and you never know, barring injury, App State and JMU. What do you
They're
say?
the two heavyweights. I mean, they're the two heavyweights that had spectacular seasons. I mean, App State has 5 overall losses for the entire year. They just went 16-2 in the Sun Belt Conference and won it for the first time ever. James Madison's also had a history-making season. They're at 28-2, and they just finished up, let's see, so they were 15-3. They were a game behind. They lost twice to App State. They lost 3 times the whole year, and 2 of those losses were to App State. There's no question. Those 2 teams are the heavyweights. I would say, from what you just said, I would be surprised if I don't know that I'd be surprised if not both of them are there, because the tournament's just so chaotic and things happen. But they're definitely the favorites. I'd be surprised if one of them isn't there. I'll go as far as to say that.
All right. Well, it is different because, those Power 5 leagues, separate the men and the women. And so they just play straight through. So if you don't get a double bye in like the ACC or the SEC, you may be playing like 5 games in like 5 days.
Right.
Here, what we experienced in Pensacola, at least last season, right? You play on Tuesday tonight, and then you get Wednesday off because the girls play, and then you play Thursday, and then the women play on Friday, so you get that off. So you really only have played, 2 games in like 3 days. Anybody can do.
Yeah, that's true. But there is also the cumulative effect. I mean, if you're Texas State, an 11 seed who did reach the semifinals last year, ended up playing 4 games.
Right.
By the time you get to that 4th game, you're playing your 4th game in 5 days, whereas your opponent's playing just their 2nd game in 2 days. I get what you're saying, and I think it's a valid point. The off days there in the men's bracket do kind of mitigate the fact that you have to play the 5 games if you're one of the bottom 4 seeds. At the same time, though, the fatigue factor will catch up with you a little bit. Maybe not as much as if you're playing like you're trying to pull off that who was it, UConn that won 5 straight games or in the Big East tournament long time ago, and it just doesn't happen very often because physically it's almost impossible for you to be a team that plays that many days in a row against a team that's more well rested than you are. It does catch up with you eventually. So, but the Sun Belt tournament is a little bit easier on the legs and the fatigue because of those built-in off days at the beginning of it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but the point is that those teams that have the double bye aren't playing for a week. And so you might get a South Alabama playing an App State who has a game under their belt, rest and play again, or a Cajuns, or for that fact matter, ULM team that has a game or two under their belt going up against an Arkansas State team that hasn't played for more than a week. That's where it's not a super duper advantage to get that double bye at that time.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point. The rest versus rust argument. And last year in this tournament, we saw 2, top 4 seeds get knocked out in the quarterfinals. The number 1 seed, regular season champions, Southern Miss were beaten, and Marshall, the number 3 seed, was beaten by the aforementioned 11 seed, Texas State, who had 2 games under their belt and came in after waxing the number 6 seed, Old Dominion, by 30 points. So, yeah, it's the rest versus the rust argument. I don't know how you get around it because you're sharing the arena with the women's bracket as well. So it kind of is what it is when it comes to that.
Yeah, it is a Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. Dave Schultz with Matt Stewart. He's got the call of the men's Sunbelt Championship in Pensacola. All right, so let's go through this because I like it feels like App is a little bit different than JMU. JMU's got the player of the year, Terrence Edwards. They have TJ Bickerstaff and Noah Friedel. Those are those 3 big guys. And usually it is those guys. And though App may have 3 or 4 guys, it seems like it doesn't have to be one either night. It can be Gregory one night. It can be Spillers another night. It can be Apson another night. It feels like they don't rely on the one Terrence Edwards Jr. guy like JMU does. And he's very good. Obviously, he was the well-deserving player of the year in the Sun Belt.
They don't have the big gun that Terrence Edwards is. They don't. You're right. They're more of I don't want to say they're more of a team than James Madison because James Madison's a solid team too. But I guess they don't have the star power, if you will, as far, in regard to the honors. Donovan Gregory didn't make the All Sun Belt first team and deservedly so. He's maybe their closest thing to it. But they've had plenty of Miles Tate has had big games for him. Trayvon Spillers has had big games for him, and CJ Huntley can have a big game for you. They got a lot of guys. They got a lot of guys can do it. And I think that's kind of the point that you're making. I think the bigger thing is if we do get a James Madison versus App State matchup, it will be on a Monday night. It will be the championship game. It'll be the 1 versus the 2 seed. It'll be contrasting styles. It'll be interesting because James Madison's a team that can put 80 on you. App can score 82, but they're more likely to play a more tempo game, that pack line defense, and try to hold the game in the 60s. They beat them twice, though. App State's beaten them twice this year, as we already pointed out in this podcast. So can they beat them 3 times? You hear coaches all the time say, "Oh, it's so tough to beat a team 3 times," but maybe it is. Coaches like to say those kind of things, and I don't know. So I don't know whether I haven't ever done the metrics and the math to figure out is it really. I think if you're the better team, then it's not so hard. But in this case, where you got 2 evenly matched teams, it might be difficult to beat a team for a 3rd time.
So that would be my point, is that if you're doing that matchup, right, App State's going to try and stop Terrence Edwards Jr., whereas JMU's got too many guys to try and stop. Although I guess you try to stop with Donovan Gregory and then take your chances with everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've done it twice already, though. I mean,
2 close ball games. Yes.
Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We're still a long way away from that. We're jumping ahead because we've got 12 days before we get to that final. And I know what we're doing here. We're looking ahead to see this tournament, and those would be the 2 favorites. But the way things usually go in this Sun Belt tournament would tell you that unfortunately one of those 2 teams is probably going to get knocked out along the way. I mean, if history holds
yes.
true.
Correct.
If history holds
we'll
true.
get to that
At the same time, but the argument to that is, well, historically, the Sun Belt hasn't had two teams this dominant at the top either. So,
right.
That's why they play the games.
All right, so
I've heard that said.
That's right. So let's take a time out. When we come back, we'll talk about JMU's chances of getting an at-large berth. We'll also preview tonight's ball game. You got ULM and Coastal Carolina, Texas State, and ODU. That'll be next on Locked On Sunbelt, right after I tell you a little bit about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drivers and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is always updating an assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. What about the 2024 Nissan Armada? Will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt. Let's continue our conversation with ESPN's Matt Stewart, JMU's chances of getting at an at-large berth, if it comes to that, and previewing tonight's first-round matchup, ULM and Coastal Carolina, Texas State taking on ODU. So let's finish it up that way with the two dominant teams, because I still think, not doing the math, and I haven't checked any blogs today or anything like that, or metrics, but if it is App State and JMU loses to App State in the championship, is there an outside shot they could still get in that large burst, which they absolutely deserve, right? Yeah. They had two. Well, Kent State isn't as good as they were supposed to be. They had like the longest winning streak at home, and that was snapped. And then they beat Michigan State. They're not as good as they were supposed to be. I think JMU deserves it. I don't know if they're going to get it, though, if that's the scenario.
Well, if the scenario that you laid out does indeed unfold, you're talking about a team that went 30-4. They would have 30 wins and 4 losses at that point, winning 2 games here in the tournament to get to 30, and then losing to App in the final, as you kind of suggested in this scenario. It's a very realistic scenario, certainly. 30-4. You're talking about a team that went 30-4 that gets left out of the tournament. Could it happen? Yeah, sure, it could happen. We've seen it happen. Right. We see it happen every year in the NCAA tournament. It would be a shame that a team that could do that. And they're not patsies by any means. They play in a tough conference. It'd be a shame, and they have the net ranking. Last time I checked, it was hovering around 50. I didn't check to see what it was today. So that, right. That in my mind, when you're around 45, that kind of puts you there. That kind of puts you on that bubble, because there's roughly anywhere from 35 to 45. How many at-large teams? There's like 33 automatic qualifiers. So that gives you 35 right. At-large teams going into the tournament. And, some of those numbers get gobbled up along the way by conference champions. So I think if you're in the top 45 in the net, that always puts you in the conversation. I think, at least traditionally, I've always looked at it that way. That puts you in the conversation to be an at-large. And James Madison certainly is close to that. Now, they don't necessarily get helped that greatly in the net here in this tournament, but the number should hold steady. I don't know that it's going to go up any. Certainly, I hope it doesn't go down any. But right. They'd be in the conversation. And, I know this, that Mark Byington is not wanting to wait and see what would happen.
Probably.
If he was to, they want to win the conference championship and not test that waters and find out, has the NCAA tournament selection committee been paying attention to them and reward them from their schedule. So they're playing for the championship, as is everybody else here in this tournament.
Sure. He doesn't want to be the guinea pig.
Correct.
That's not the rankings. We're talking with Matt Stewart. He's got the call of the Sunbelt Men's Championship on
ESPN. Hydrating because I got 12 games to call.
There you go. Through the semifinals. All right. So before we get to the other top 4 seeds, the 2 others, let's talk about tonight's ball games. You do have ULM and Coastal Carolina. ULM struggled early on in the season, may have found something. You know, they beat the Cajuns. They rattled off a few wins in a row. They're tougher than they would appear. And then Coastal Carolina went through a coaching change, you know, a month into the season. Why don't you preview that ball game?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. On my podcast, we were talking about Nate Ross, who's calling the games with me. We talked about this, you know, 12-13. You look at the records, you look at how they closed the season. ULM lost their last 3, but you're right. They had played fairly well. They've lost their last 3, 4 of their last 5. They had won 6 out of 8 leading into that. You know, you can make the numbers look whatever you want them to look.
Sure.
But the bottom line is ULM did not close the season strong, and neither did Coastal Carolina, although we talked to Benny Moss, and he was excited about how hard they played James Madison in their finale. They were down 2 or 3 with less than 2 minutes to go and ended up losing by, 8-10, whatever the case may be. So every coach is going to look for the silver lining in that situation. But I'm excited. I think it's a good matchup. I think it's a fun matchup. On paper, certainly that doesn't scream, hey, this is a fun matchup, you should watch it. But I think they're 2 teams that are fairly evenly matched. You know, just the gut in me says right now, I think Coastal's got a little bit of an edge. I don't know. I'm a little concerned that ULM is worn out here. You know, they've used Tyreek Locour as their point guard. He's really a 2 guard, but they have to use him at the point guard all season long because they don't have anybody else to do it. And so he's kind of lost a little bit of his offense. If you look, his numbers are down from a year ago, about 3 points per game, less than a year ago, because he's just not as good offensively with the ball in his hands as he is playing off the ball, playing the 2 guard position. So, and Nika Mesvarishvili is, you know, has had good games. In fact, when they played Coastal and beat Coastal by 4 during the regular season, he had 28, but he's been inconsistent. Their last win against Louisiana, he had a nice game, hit some big shots, had a big block at the end of the ball game to secure the victory for the Warhawks. So the bottom line is, I don't know really where these 2 teams are going into this game, but I do think it will be a fun game because both these teams come in, show up in Pensacola, and here's a chance to maybe, you know, redeem the season a little bit by getting a win here. And certainly, you know, Coastal can beat ULM can beat Coastal. Right. So these are winnable games for both of them. A very realistic goal. Let's get a win. Let's get a win in Pensacola, and I think that's good. The other matchup, if we want to jump ahead to that.
I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, is Old Dominion and Texas State. You know, with me, and we talked to Kieran Donahue, the interim head coach, who, you know, their next loss is his last game, maybe his last game in the program. They've already hired the successor. And so what concerns me a little bit about Old Dominion is, although Kieran says, hey, look, they had their best practice of the year, he said this week. And, you know, they're going down there. They're going down to Pensacola to compete and win. What concerns me, though, and I'm not blaming Old Dominion by any means. They moved on. They got their head coach. It looks to me that the program's turned the page. I mean, they've already got their next head coach. They've already moved on from this season. It would only be natural, even if there wasn't a coaching change in today's collegiate world of sports, every player at the end of the season is thinking, where's my next landing spot? Because of the open-ended, never-ending transfer portal. You know, even more so now that you got a new coach, you know the new coach is coming in. You know the coaching staff you've been playing for, likely they're gone. They're sharpening up their pens and working on their resumes too, probably. So the fact that they've already hired the coach, that Jeff Jones retired, they bring in Mike Jones 4 days later. Everybody says it's a great hire. Personally, I don't know Mike Jones. I know his resume.
Good
From
one.
a resume standpoint, it looks like a good hire.
Yeah.
He knows how to recruit that area. He's from that area. He played at Old Dominion. He was at DeMatha, did well. He was at Virginia Tech, and now he's at Maryland as an assistant coach. So hopefully it does work out well for him. But I don't know what the players' minds are right now when you look on, and again, I don't fault them for this. I'd be doing the same thing. You look at the website because you want to lead with the big story. And the big story is we got a new head coach.
Sure.
But you look at their website, the website's about the new head coach. It isn't about that. Well, we got another game to play, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm a little concerned about Old Dominion in that regard. Texas State is playing well. I mean, Texas State has been down this road before. Ironically, Texas State, prior to last year when they were 11th seed and got to the semifinals, winning 3 games in Pensacola, they'd gone in as the 1 seed the 2 years prior and got knocked out in their first game. So maybe they play better with this as the underdog. Maybe they just play. Maybe that just fits their personality better. That they're an underdog. One thing to look for is they've won 7 of their last 10 to close the season. They went from 1-8 in the Sun Belt and went 6-3 in the Sun Belt in the back half of it, and they were that close to getting out of the bottom 4. A loss to Marshall the first week of January cost them the tiebreaker because they finished tied for 10th with Marshall in the standings. So that kind of goes. I was looking at that today as I'm working on my notes, and I said, wow, that just shows you never know what game is going to be a big game. As it turns out, that game in January against Marshall turned out to be a really big game because it meant they had to play today instead of play their first game on Thursday. So you never know. But Texas State is playing with a lot of momentum right now. Damian Sykes has had 6 consecutive double-doubles, or he's had 6 double-doubles on the season, and they've all come since he went into the starting lineup on February 1st, and that just coincides with the 7-3 run over the last 10 games. They're playing well. They're playing Texas State kind of basketball. They don't have anybody who makes the all Sun Belt team because that's just kind of not the Texas State way. They're a tough defensive team. They're going to get after you. The last time they played Old Dominion, didn't play them this year. Last time they played Old Dominion, they beat them by 29 points in the second round of the tournament last year. So I'm not making a prediction. I don't make predictions when I'm calling games, but Texas State looks good in this one.
Right.
Let me say that.
Well, a couple of things. I don't know how many teams in this league have beaten both Troy and App State, and Texas State, although at home, did that. And
in the last month, too. Last month.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe ODU used up all of their emotion for senior night. Jeff Jones came back, and they had a big win at home for that. So maybe they used up their whatever else they had left in the tank in that ball game because they played a big ball game in that night.
Yeah, it's just been a tough season for them all the way around. I mean, just all the way around. They had to dismiss 2 of their players, their starting center, and then their leading scorer, Bashan Allett, who, they had to dismiss him for conduct reasons. And then, of course, their head coach has a heart attack. Jeff Jones has a heart attack when they're out in Hawaii, and he's battling prostate cancer. And, and then, they go into the final week of the regular season, and they sit there and they watch everybody cheer for the new head coach. And I know some of them will be playing for that new head coach in all likelihood. But there's no doubt if their brains and their minds are someplace else, you wouldn't blame them. That's for sure.
All right, one more time out. We'll come back and wrap things up with ESPN's Matt Stewart. We look at Troy. We look at JMU and what makes the Sun Belt Conference tournament special. We'll do that when we come back. Let me tell you a little bit about FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We'll see if I remember to place a bet on the Pelicans ball game, the favorite. Not a very big one. Can definitely lose more than I win, but I will be betting it on the favorite. All right, let's wrap things up with ESPN's Matt Stewart on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Matt calling the ball games through the semifinals of the Sunbelt Championship in Pensacola. We talk about Troy and JMU coming up and what makes the Sunbelt Conference Tournament special. It is Matt Stewart, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Matt's got the call of the men's championship Sunbelt tournament in Pensacola through the semifinals. All right, let's talk about those 2 other top 4 teams. You got Troy, always been a big Scott Cross fan. Got off to a little bit of a slow start this year, out of conference, and then In conference, he's been very good. They sweep the Cajuns, among others, although they did just lose to Texas State. And then you got a newcomer in Brian Hodgson, Arkansas State's head coach. What do you think about these two teams? Because despite what happened his last time out for Arkansas State, taking it on the chin to App, they've played very well down the stretch.
Yeah. My message in regard to Troy and Arkansas State is don't sleep on them. I mean, both of them are really good teams. Troy, Scott Cross, been there, done that. I agree with you. Whoever has met Scott Cross and doesn't like Scott Cross, then there's something wrong with you, because Scott Cross is a fine gentleman. He's a great coach. He's a good guy, and he's got that Troy team playing, as one of the best teams in the conference. I forget exactly what the stat. The last three, they're the only team the last 3, or maybe it's 4 seasons. I think 3 seasons that's had double-digit Sun Belt wins each of those seasons. So they're they're not a surprise program, although they get here as the 3 seed and we're like, wow, we're surprised. Well, that's because they were picked, I think they were picked 7th or 8th in the preseason rankings, and that's probably more of an indictment against the people that were voting than it was about their program. But it's hard. The preseason rankings are hard. It's really all about who's coming back, and App certainly had everybody coming back, and James Madison, and that's why they were 1-2, and that's why they're 1-2 here at the end of the regular season too. But Troy's put together a great season. Christian Eugene makes the All Sun Belt first team. Miles Rigsby is the freshman of the year, and they're just a solid team. Amir Muhammad, they typically don't beat themselves. Wouldn't sleep on Troy. A couple of weeks ago, they were in first place in the Sun Belt. They jumped in there for 1 week, and they couldn't hold the spot. They come in at 1-3, other than the fact that one gets to raise the banner as the regular season champion. There's really no difference. The main goal is to get that top 4 seed bye, and they were able to do that. Don't sleep on Troy. Don't sleep on Arkansas State. Brian Hodgson was my vote. I don't get a vote, but on my podcast we vote and choose. That's my world.
Well, you should get a vote.
That's my world. We vote on my Nate and I chose Brian Hodgson as my coach of the year because I based my coach of the year determination on how did the coach do relative to expectations. And I got to say, I didn't give Arkansas State a second thought when the season started, quite frankly. They were picked 9th, and they finished 4th. That's a heck of a jump right there. Nobody expected much out of anything. They got a high-flying offense. He's got a super talented team. Caleb Fields, and again, that would have been my choice for player of the year over Terrence Edwards. As good as Terrence Edwards is, I would have gone Caleb Fields. Averages 14 a game, 6 assists per game. That's roughly 28 to 30 points per game he provides for his team every single game. I love Caleb Fields. He would have been my player of the year choice. Taryn Todd, Freddie Hicks, Isaiah Nelson, great rebounder and rim protector. That said, this is kind of uncharted waters for them. This is new. Scott Cross, Troy, they've been there. James Madison, been there. App State, they've been there. Arkansas State, how do they react in this situation? And, maybe it doesn't face them at all. Maybe it's nothing, but I think it's legit. We'll see how they do. And they do have, if they're able to win their quarterfinal, which would be against a tough, in all likelihood, Louisiana team.
Right.
Then they got to play App in the semis. So their road's pretty tough. They do get all those days off leading up to Saturday, but their road, once they start playing, is pretty tough.
Well, let's talk about the Cajuns. They're the defending champions. They are the 5 seed. Them, getting past their first game is not for sure because they struggled against ULM. Actually lost to Monroe, although they did beat Coastal Carolina at home. They may or may not have their point guard, Themis Folks. He didn't play in the last ball game against Southern Miss. From my understanding, he won't be there, but things can change.
He's still got until Thursday, right?
Yes. Until Thursday. Yep. Or Wednesday, right? Game's not till Thursday, but I mean, he's got to go with the team. I guess he could drive on his own if he wants to.
I would certainly think, even if he's not, if there's a question mark, he's coming with the team. I would have him on the bus.
Okay, so that's the one part where I would be That matchup did not go well for Arkansas State twice. I think they made a run in the second ball game,
right?
But they have a matchup problem down low with Katinge, who's just bigger than the two guys that they have down there. And they're the one team.
The Sun Belt's round mound of rebound, right?
If you will. They're the one team that decided not to double team him. I got to think that's got to change to get the ball out of his hands, because the two guys that they have just don't match up. I mean, it's like 50, 60 pounds in weight difference. They can't defend him.
It's a big difference. It is a big difference. And Katinge's had a great season. Played at Coastal his first 2 years. Was dropping the bucket. He didn't do much. But then went to Three Rivers Community College. Now he's at Louisiana. Has had a great season. Made the All Sun Belt team. Kobe, Julian. My question is, can the Raging Cajuns get back to where they were? They were one of the best teams in the conference up until the last 2-3 weeks of the season. They ended up losing 4 of their last 5. They snapped a 4-game losing streak with a regular season finale victory over Southern Miss. Prior to that, I think they'd won 10 out of 11. And they were one of the teams. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. I thought they were a lock to be a top 4 seed, and they played their way out of it.
That's right.
So what team shows up in Pensacola to play on Thursday? I would anticipate that whether it's ULM or Coastal, they should be able to get past that matchup. But what happens when they play the next game against Arkansas State? And those Arkansas State, those were weeks ago. It's been a while since they played Arkansas State. Arkansas State's playing a lot better than they were when they played them the first time, and Louisiana's not playing as well as they were when they played them the first time. So, but it is Bob Marlin, and it is the Raging Cajuns, and you love their moxie, and they've been down this road before. Nothing that they encounter in the arena will be new to them, so you can never count them out.
Right. So we'll see how that goes. If they be honest with you, Matt, they beat Southern Miss, but they didn't play very well in that ball game. They got off to a quick start, had a run at the end of the first half, had a run at the end of the ball game, so it looked like a big blowout win.
They just haven't played well. They haven't played well the last 3 weeks. They just haven't.
They have not played well since Bowling Green, actually, since the Sun Belt MAC in the last 5 games now. They just have not played particularly well. All right. What overall, though, what excites you about doing these ball games for the Sun Belt Championship? We'll wrap it up there. Matt Stewart with having the Sun Belt Championship games in Pensacola through the semifinals. What gets you excited to do 12 games in about 5 days?
Well, look, before I answer that question, let me also say don't sleep. I think Southern Miss has a puncher's chance. Only simply because they got a talented roster. Curbelo and Victor Hart are back, and Austin Crowley. I think he's super talented. And, the last I heard, Jay Ladner is going to make the trip, and he's going to try to coach the team in this tournament after being out for a month with a heart attack, a very serious heart attack. They called it, they call it a medical emergency, and then his family released a statement thanks to the responders for saving his life. So that sounds a little bit more than just a medical emergency. That sounds like a life or death situation. But apparently the doctors have given him an okay. So I would like to see them have some success here. They came here last year as the regular season champs and got knocked out in the first round. So I think they got a talented team just based on talent alone. I think Owuakor, I didn't mention him either. Victor Owuakor. I think they're a team that I'm not saying they're going to win it, but I think they're a team that can come down here and make some noise. Okay, to answer your question, what I love about this tournament is, it's not like the SEC or the ACC, and those are all great tournaments. Don't get me wrong; those would be fun tournaments to call. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I like about this tournament, other than outside compared to those tournaments, is the teams that get to those tournaments, a lot of them are like saying, okay, we're playing for seeding here. We need a win. We need a win to improve our seeding. We need 2 wins to improve our seeding. We need to do this. We need to do that. The teams here that show up here, even James Madison at 28-3, are all like, we got to win this thing, as well. Could you imagine if a team was 28-3 and coming out of the SEC, Jay Billis and then be like, it doesn't matter whether they lose by 40, they're still on the one line, and here's James Madison at 28-3, they're getting off the bus and they're like, man, we got to win this thing. That's what I love about this tournament, is that everybody that shows up here has the same mindset, that it's like you're walking out there you're walking the plank, and you got to figure out, when I jump off this thing, can I swim to shore and survive this? So that's what I love about this tournament. That's what I love about it.
A totally unnecessary and unprovoked question. Does 28-3 mean anything to you, man? I'm just out of curiosity.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. He's Matt Stewart. He's got the Sunbelt Championship men's basketball from Pensacola through the semifinals. You do have the first round ball games tonight. Really appreciate your time, Matt. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Have a great call, and we'll be watching and listening. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.